Eyebrow Piercing Myths Debunked, a body piercer's perspective. Coming up next on Piercing Myths, episode number 1. For those who are new to the channel, welcome to the Body Piercing and Tattooing channel. I hope you're enjoying the videos. Hope you're finding them helpful and useful, but you might not know who I am. My name is DaVo. I'm a professional body piercer and have been since 1994. I own and operate the Axiom Body Piercing Studio, located right here in Des Moines, Iowa, inside Skin Kitchen Tattoo. This is a brand new series I'm starting. We're going to go through some myths or some things that people say about a particular piercing and debunk them. Tell you why that's not right or correct. I'm going to start off now today with eyebrow piercings and some of the more common myths that I do hear about this particular piercing. So the first myth. Eyebrow piercings are extremely painful. No, they aren't. Usually most people's experience with these is the forceps can be a little uncomfortable. It can feel kind of weird to have somebody pulling on that. You can't kind of close your eye in some cases. But the piercing themselves, the actual puncture and getting the jewelry in, most people don't even feel it. They're kind of surprised by how little very little it hurts. I would say that it hurts less than nostril piercings, definitely lip piercings, probably maybe on the same level of a free-handed septum piercing. Even some ear piercings like upper ear cartilage hurt more than an eyebrow piercing does. Now, keep in mind, everybody's different. Everybody's wired a little different. Everybody has different experiences with what they consider painful or not painful. So it can vary a little bit from person to person, but most people say this is not a very painful or uncomfortable piercing to get done. In the second myth, eyebrow piercings are difficult to heal. Actually, to be honest with you, they're one of the easiest piercings to heal, mainly because they don't really have as much contact with the world around them, or a little bit easier to isolate during the healing process, and they're a pretty quick heal. Healing out anywhere from, best case scenario, 2 months, worst case scenario, about 6 months. And it's really simple to heal these out. You clean them twice a day using a sterile saline solution. I suggest rinsing them off at the end of your shower, and you practice cross-contamination, which I'll get into in this next part. Myth number 3, eyebrow piercings require extensive aftercare. Really, as I said earlier, they're pretty simple. You clean them twice a day to remove that discharge, rinse in the shower once a day to get that discharge or the crusties off there, and then you practice cross-contamination, which a majority of which is keeping it away from things that may cause an infection. And practicing some common sense, like wash your hands before you handle it, no oral contact, no exchange of bodily fluids, keeping your environment clean, clothing, bedding, towels, not submerging the piercing in bodies of water you can't control the quality of, keeping pets away from the piercing, do not overhandle the piercing. Also make sure that if your hair comes in contact with it, it is dry, not wet. Other than that, it's a pretty simple heal. It's just keep things away from it and clean it twice a day, and then rinse it off at the end of your shower. This piercing, like I said earlier, can be a little bit easier to isolate than many other piercings on your face. Eyebrow piercings are kind of off to the side, so sometimes you can put a pillow so that it's just kind of over to that point so that it's elevated off the bed if you sleep on your side. Also, it's not like ear piercings where it's coming in contact with everything that ears come in contact with, or a lip piercing where you're bumping it on stuff, and etc. Even a nostril piercing can be a little bit more difficult to isolate. I would say basically the two most difficult things is just keeping the area clean, keeping things away from it, and practicing that cross-contamination prevention, and isolating the piercing. Other than that, it's a pretty easy heal. Myth number 4, eyebrow piercings always reject or migrate, and they're a surface-to-surface piercing. If you have the correct anatomy, where it's meaty enough where it can support the piercing, chances are that piercing is never going to reject or migrate. You do have kind of a hill with 2 sides, and that's what we're piercing through. It's not like we're grabbing your cheek and trying to pierce it. It got this reputation mainly in the 90s probably more than anything else because there were so many of them being done, and they were being done with incorrect jewelry. We've learned over the years that rings are a really bad choice, mainly because they have a lot more contact, they're more likely to get snagged on things, and they prolong healing period and cause other problems. The other thing that everybody was putting in them was straight barbells with like this little extra long to allow for swelling. Those things added outward pressure, which would cause them to migrate. With correct jewelry, and if you have the anatomy in its place correctly, chances are it may migrate just a little bit, but it's not going to reject completely, and you're not going to end up with a line scar. The other thing to consider is it's more prone to reject or migrate in areas where there's a lot of movement. So the further you go into the center area where you're constantly, surprise, frown, prize, surprise, frown, that kind of thing where your eyebrows go up and down and they expand and contract. In those cases, you are more likely to see migration if it's right in that area, just basically because there's more movement, there's more pressure outward, and more likely to cause issues. Also, it really comes down to anatomy. If you have it's not like a thick ridge there, meaty, so to speak, you're probably a little bit more prone to that, and you should discuss that with your piercer. And the other thing you do to avoid migration is just isolate the piercing and avoid abuse. Even after the piercing is healed, avoid overhandling the area and having it get caught and snagged on things. Wearing proper jewelry that isn't too big for the piercing area is another big factor that's going to make a difference in wearing proper jewelry. Now, this one is one of those ones that I hear over and over again. Myth number 5, that eyebrow piercings can cause nerve damage or paralysis. I have yet, in my 30 years of piercing, came across personally a case where this has happened. There are nerve groupings up in here, a little bit more towards the center than in the sides, but the reality is if you did cause any damage, it's not going to get to the point or extent where it's going to cause paralysis or other problems. You might notice a little numbness for a while, and as your body reconnects that tissue and etc., that numbness will go away. Your body will compensate for it. The only case where I could see that possibly actually numbing and paralysis happening was if you got a severe infection, left it untreated, and it started to affect your nervous system. Chances of that, you really have to put something, just not take care of it, get it infected, and when it's infected, just leave it as it is and not do anything to resolve the problem. The other thing is that numbness feeling could be being caused by swelling. Sometimes swelling, when it stretches those nerve endings out because the area expands, it can feel like it's number than it usually is if you touch it. That also fades as the swelling goes down. This is really common with tongue piercings or oral piercings where people are like, my lips numb or my tongue's numb. It's more about that swelling and the expansion of that area and those nerve endings being further apart than anything else. Myth number 6, eyebrow piercings always cause bruising. Not always the case. It is common occasionally to get a black eye kind of thing going on right after a eyebrow piercing. And this is caused usually by the forceps being too tight or being moved around too much, or you're just one of those people that's sensitive to bruising, where those blood vessels break very easily under the skin and then spread outward. Usually this only lasts a few days. It's not something that you really have to be concerned about. If you've never had a black eye before, they usually fade pretty quickly. You can reduce the likelihood of these mainly by making sure your piercer doesn't have that thing on there too tight. In the last one of the most common ones, and I kind of touched on this earlier, eyebrow piercings always heal better with rings and straight barbells. There was a time when rings were considered kind of the standard. That was over 25 years ago. We have learned that a curved barbell is a much better option as far as healing. During that period of time where rings were popular, everybody went, well, those cause problems. Let's try straight barbells. And they would do barbells where they would take about a third of two-thirds of the length of that barbell would be the piercing width, and then there would be that extra part hanging down and do it with straight barbells. This caused problems because it kind of forced that tissue outward, which increased the likelihood of rejection and other problems. Also, it was more prone to getting caught on things. The biggest thing with these is your best option is a curved barbell. We've learned over and over again that that's your best option, that heals the best, and will stay in there the longest and have the least amount of rejection, tearing, and etc. There's no truth to rings. They said that, well, there was a theory behind it, and I've at one time thought this way too, that if the swelling went beyond the length, there was more room with a ring, and it was easier to get the discharge off and everything else. We've learned since then that that isn't the case, and you should stay away from them. Now, if you do want to wear a ring in your piercing, you can do it for short periods of time, but it's important to keep correct jewelry in these to make them last a long period of time. However, after its season, let's say about 6 months to a year into it, it may not be a problem to switch out to a ring, try it out, but if it starts getting caught a lot or you start to notice tenderness with the piercing, I would suggest switching back to the curved barbell. Here's some of my experiences as someone who has an eyebrow piercing and also has done a number of them over the last 30 plus years. The biggest things you need to know and do is, first off and foremost, find a reputable and experienced piercer. Do your research, find out about them, ask some questions, and do all that due diligence that you need to do. The next thing is placement and anatomy are very important to have a lifetime long piercing, regardless where it's at. But with eyebrows, it can be very important. If you just don't have the structure to support that piercing, it is not a good idea. And if your piercer does tell you that, it's a piercing you should probably avoid. The other thing is having it placed correctly, avoiding areas that move around a lot, and etc. is going to mean that that piercing is going to last a lifetime, if not, in the worst case scenario, a lot longer than something that's pierced in an area where you have a lot of movement. As I talked about briefly earlier, moving more towards the nose with the placement increases the amount of movement the eyebrow has. The traditional spot was right at the edge of the eye. It's usually probably the most successful placement that you're going to have for that piercing as far as avoiding problems, easy to isolate, and not causing issues like migration or rejection. There's a reason why so many people have them pierced there. It's because it works. It is important that once the piercing, roughly about 6 to 8 weeks in, that you downsize to a piece of jewelry that fits properly. If you have a lot of excess jewelry showing and it's really, really super loose, that just increases the likelihood of that thing getting caught on stuff and causing tears and rips and etc. Also, it's very abusive. It can prolong the healing period, and that movement isn't needed anymore, or that extra room. It's important to wear jewelry that fits properly. And a lot of times you have to go see your piercer and have them take a look at it, maybe take out a caliper and measure and find that perfect fit for you. The biggest thing is always, whenever you're getting pierced, because piercers, we're passionate about what we do. We love to share our knowledge. Ask lots of questions, especially if you're unsure about something. Ask during the consultation. Ask during the marking. Ask during the decision on the placement. Why did they choose there? What about here? Ask those questions. When they go through the aftercare with you, ask questions about anything that doesn't seem completely clear to you. We love to educate people about what we love, which is piercing. And we want you to have a successful heal and be able to have that piercing for the rest of your life if you'd like. And that means education. That means talking to you, being open and honest about every piercing, and making sure that you're supplied with enough information to heal that piercing properly and wear it for the rest of your life. So did I miss a myth? If I did, leave a comment, or if you have an eyebrow piercing, tell us a little bit about your experiences. Till next time, here's hoping your piercings heal with ease and without a single issue. And if you're in the Des Moines, Iowa area, I'd love to see if your body piercing needs in the future. Have a good day, everybody. Take care, and we'll see you in that next video.